Oh, do you have a Band-Aid? Because I scraped my knee when I fell for you. Get it? Because pickup lines. They're pretty annoying. Hiya folks, Fruit and Doggy here to complain about things that aggravate and annoy me. And what's on my mind right now is English class. Now, I haven't been in class for many a year now, but this was really true throughout all of my life. Every single class I had that was about English has been more negative than positive. It's probably an overstatement. I can think of a couple of classes I had where I did like the teacher, I did enjoy some of the coursework, but I never really cared for English class. And what I find so annoying and aggravating about that is one of the main interests I had as a kid was reading. I read a lot. I would check out books from the school library all the time, and when we did different points for, I guess, class assignments, I didn't have any problems getting enough points for an A. When it came to, this was more kind of a late elementary school system where you'd get points to be used to buy things from, what was it? Wasn't quite an auction, but there was a little point store that would take place at the end of each 9 weeks, and however many points you earned for that period of time you could spend and buy stuff. And I remember in one grade that I earned enough points just by myself that I pulled my entire class that we got to have first pick. Because it was based on how many points each classroom earned. I just read that much and I earned enough points. But despite my love of reading, that didn't necessarily translate to English class. And that's why I disliked English, or that's why I dislike about school at times, is you might really like a subject or an area within a subject, but the classroom setting doesn't necessarily translate to that. The environment, the teacher, how it has to be covered doesn't necessarily connect to that. And I think there's quite a few different aspects that can be limiting about that. But when it comes to English specifically, it was so dry. I remember that very specifically. Because, and I think this is true for most people, no matter how much you might love the subject, learning about punctuation rules and finding out what an adjective is and what an adverb is and when to put a "ly" at the end of a word, and what's the word? Is that the right word? It's not. I think prefixes. That doesn't sound right either, but I'm going to stick with it. If I can think of the right word later, I might edit that in. But anyways, all of those the rules of how to speak and write proper English, that isn't compelling, that isn't interesting. It's so droll, it's so just lacking of any interest. But I understand, that's not really the teacher's fault. That's just one of those things that has to be taught to some degree. But I would argue that really the best way to learn that is to read a wide variety of books, to see different examples of sentence structure and different ways that you can compose sentences and get your points across. I think that's a much more organic and dynamic way to learn some of those aspects, and then supplement it with some of that rote learning, those different worksheets that you have to do. And I mean, I can understand that, composing sentences in very specific ways or correcting mistakes in sentences. That was okay sometimes, so that wasn't the worst. But I think what most people think of when it comes to English class and what they dreaded was book reports. And Actually, the ones where you got to select your own book, even though you had to do kind of the breakdown of the book, and that was a little artificial and a little boring. Being able to choose your own book and do it, that was okay. But I actually dislike classic literature, I think because of having it shoved down, I can only say this for myself, my throat when I was a kid. Middle school and high school. Well, these are classic literature, these are timeless books, and we'll be covering them. And I swear, from the point of view of a kid, these are the worst possible books to talk about, to have any level of excitement or interest. What were some of them? The Great Gatsby. Ugh. Rich people are evil and they might have a lot of money, but they're wicked and they're gonna get their way. They're gonna avoid being caught. And it's like, so what? Class dynamics and class warfare? What a riveting topic to cover. And oh joys, the wonders of symbolism, which has to be one of the laziest things you could possibly do. I think symbolism's stupid. Oh wow, this duck represents another thing. Isn't that really meaningful? No, it's a symbol. It represents something. Big freaking whoop. Who cares? No, not the Great Gatsby. Great Expectations. Another dreadful, boring book with not uninspired characters, but characters that you unlikable. I didn't like any of the characters. I think there was some more kind of a simple, honest fellow who gave money to, I think his name was Pip. He seemed okay, but the person that Pip fell in love with, just kind of an awful young girl, I thought. I mean, there's so many books from earlier time periods that are considered great literature, but I don't really know why. The messages that they have to tell aren't that invigorating or interesting. They certainly don't seem very up to date. They don't seem timeless, but I don't know. They're on a list of approved books by the big wigs and the know-it-alls. So I don't know. I think they should really change things up when it comes to what books to teach in English class, because how in the world are you ever going to get people who are literate, who are excited, who are going to be lifelong readers, who are going to engage with both fiction and nonfiction, if you pick the worst absolute books possible to teach from? I don't know. I just don't get that mindset myself, but if you want to be cynical or conspiratorial, you could always say, well, they don't want people who are literate. They don't want people who can think for themselves. They want mindless drones who do what they're told, and so pick the most mindless books you possibly can. I don't know. When put it like that, I sort of would have to agree that sort of makes sense, because I don't know why else you would pick these books. What's another one? The Grapes of Wrath. I can understand, or I can actually get a couple of themes or a couple of points that the book was trying to make about how during the Great Depression there were people who did have some money and some resources, and they were taking advantage of the incredibly destitute and pitting them against each other. It's like, hey, come out here, we've got plenty of jobs. We need people to pick fruit. And then as soon as you get a whole ton of people over, it's like, hey, we're not going to pay a good amount of money for you to work. We're going to pay as little as we possibly can, but because you're all so desperate, somebody's going to do it. And I know there's going to be people who are going to make parallels to the modern day, and it's like, well, that's what the rich does now. It's the 1%. We need a livable wage. I'm not even going to open that can of worms. Probably shouldn't have mentioned Grapes of Wrath for that reason, but it came to mind, and I didn't think that far ahead. My bad. But anyways, English class. I thought it was one of the worst classes ever. It didn't ruin books for me. That wasn't the reason I stopped reading for periods of time. But I think it probably has ruined books for a lot of people. And I think that's a great disservice. Literacy is an amazing gift. And just like the internet has all the depth and breadth of the world, so do books. You can find a book on any subject. And definitely the writer makes a big difference. Their tone, how they set up their books. But, if you're illiterate, it's such a amazing gift. Why waste it? Why not read? But if your love of reading has been stamped to death by a terrible system, then, I'm sorry. I can't blame you for being put through the ringer. But anyways, that's me complaining about English, and sort of an ironic one because it's all in the past, doesn't apply to me now. But I guess in this case, I'm thinking about people young people who'd be going through class now. It's like, what can we do to change things so that doesn't happen? I'd really like to see that change. And maybe if enough people agree and complain and it's like, hey, let's shake things up a little bit, maybe that can change. But anyways, hope you enjoyed, and as always, fruit and doggy. That's good English right there, huh?